How do we grow this influence of black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy-making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chatlash, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.
This is greeneconomy.tv and I'm Gordon Brown. Hello to you. Today we have a fantastic topic. We're going to be talking about waste management companies and their role in circular economy in this edition of the Circular Economy Show. Before I introduce my special guest for today, let's hear a word from the sponsors.
This show is brought to you by GBCSA's Positive Impact Magazine.
Right, welcome as always, Chris Whyte, Director of the African Circular Economy Network, and a very special and warm welcome to Brindha Roberts, Sustainability Manager at Averda.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and viewers.
What a pleasure. So, as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the role of waste management companies. In particular, industrial waste streams, and how we can, well, I guess start with looking at some of the achievements that we've already achieved as far as circularity in relation to a number of these waste streams. We're also talking about some of the things that we could do to really bring that circular economy thinking in to solve some of those waste streams. But before I get ahead of it, I'm going to introduce Chris, and I'm going to ask him to fire away and just get the conversation started with Brindha. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Gordon, and Brindha, welcome to the show. Really nice to have you on board. I think the first thing I really want to try and get across is obviously that your circular economy is far more than just about waste. It's about looking at the multi-sectoral approach from education to infrastructure, tourism, health, transport. But waste is a critical component to this. And if we look at the circular economy definition, it is always comes back to the likes of the Ellen MacArthur diagram, where we want to look at the biological and technical materials being put back into circulation for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. Waste management companies have been around for a long time. They're a vital component in terms of managing our waste streams across the country. But we've always had this typical, what we call the hump and dump mentality. So waste management companies have been about making sure that we own a whole, that we work with transport as our main income, and we basically transport product from A to B and we put it into a hole in the ground. So what we're seeing now is that as we're getting a transition towards a circular economy, the waste management companies, in particular those with international connections like Averda, are starting to look at becoming more circular in terms of their application and their approach. So we're moving away from the hump and dump opportunity, and we're looking at landfill diversion. So perhaps as a way of introduction, Brindha, you could give us a broad overview in terms of your vision with regards to moving towards a circular economy.
Thanks, Chris. I agree with your summation and the fact that I think in the last 100 years or so, the typical waste management industry hasn't really changed much or evolved. It's been about picking up waste, be it back then with horse and cart, and now with vehicles, and taking it to a disposal or a dump site. Averda's mission is different. We recognized a while ago that there has to be a significant change in how waste is seen and how waste is managed. So waste is no longer to be discarded or seen as something that is of zero value. Waste is a commodity. Waste has economic value. And it's about our company untapping the value of that waste stream for our clients and for the benefit of a circular economy and society as a whole, right? So our mission at Averda is to treat, recover, and recycle more than 80% of the waste that flows through our fleet and facilities using innovative, sustainable solutions that ultimately satisfy our customer needs. In doing so, we comply with and we assist our clients in meeting their compliance obligations, which is quite stringent and has, you have to always keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to these compliance and regulations because they change a lot. And that's difficult to do when you're in industry specifically. I come from industry prior to joining the Averda and the waste sector. And I can tell you that there are loads of challenges within industry when it comes to managing waste and waste streams. First of all, when you're on the production floor or part of the engineering or the process teams, your core responsibility is to deliver your products, right, with the greatest efficiencies and the minimum amount of waste. When you're in corporate, in industry, it's about driving the sustainability agendas. And generally, between those two, between what corporate manufacturing needs and engineering and production flow actually needs, those two don't really seem to be able to tie up, right? One needs zero waste to landfill, the other one just needs to get their product out with the best efficiencies. And they need to partner with companies. They need the experts and the consultants, which is the formal waste industry, much like Averda, to step in and assist, to step in and help with the compliance aspects, with the duty of care that they have as generators of waste, and in providing them with the best available technologies and solutions and options for those waste streams.
I think that's a great summation in terms of the way we need to move forward. As we all understand that we want to try and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key elements to that is SDG 17, which is Partnerships for Change. And groups like Averda and other waste management companies understand they cannot be everything and to each of their clients. They've got to be able to look at partnerships. They've got to be able to look at, if there are not systems that they have by themselves, that they are partnering with other organizations that can provide solutions, technologies, applications, and approaches that would look at diversion of landfill. There's key opportunities in that, obviously, from a business perspective. I know Averda is one of those companies that's looked at the hazardous side of the waste streams, particularly hydrocarbon wastes, and looking at high CV wastes where those can be put back into application, and we'll unpack that in a minute. But you raised another key issue, and that's of policy. And it is very, very difficult. Their policies are changing all the time. Directives are changing, not only at national level, but at provincial level. So the Western Cape now is, they've got to look at 50% diversion of organics by next year. Last month alone, we had the landfill ban of any electronic waste. 2016, we had the ban of the lighting waste and batteries. So these things change all the time. Tires are no longer allowed at landfills, but those are getting piled up and stockpiled everywhere. So the opportunity really is that a responsible waste management company needs to understand what it can do by itself and what it can do with its partnerships. Perhaps give us a little short intro in terms of the high CV waste process and application that you are doing currently with Averda.
Sure. Before I get there, referring to relationships, I personally don't believe that anyone, or I think it's known, formal sector cannot do it on their own. Government cannot do it on their own. We have to partner. We have to build good relationships and understanding. Setting policy and regulation is great. We know there are challenges around enforcement, but the practicalities of implementing these things need to feed back into government. And that's where the relationship building comes in. And I have found great success in that when we go with a learning opportunity or or managing a waste stream, which doesn't quite fit into the way regulations are written, for example, we're able to engage and discuss and find a feasible solution with government, which is always a win for both parties, including the customer. Regarding the high CV waste streams, so much like the old management of waste, which is at lowest cost finding a solution, and in South Africa that just happened to have been landfill for many of the years, the petroleum industry has waste streams that are quite complex, have high chemical compositions, and sometimes have high CV value, which means they do have the potential to be a fuel. Although compared to things like coal, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, but it's quite complicated waste streams. Now, traditionally, these waste streams would go into a Class A or a high hazardous landfill site, which is equipped to deal with these waste streams in the sense that they have liners, they have leak detection systems, much like our Vlakfontein landfill, to warn you of any potential environmental impacts. But now with the promulgation or the prohibition regulations that came in that prohibited these high CV or potential fuel waste streams from going into landfill sites, Averda has constructed a blending platform. And what that is exactly the concept of circular economy. We have taken these waste streams and are able to blend them in a very scientific manner. So we needed to understand upfront what is the chemical composition of these waste streams. What happens when you mix this with that, for example? So waste management has evolved to being engineers and chemists. From the blending platform, we are now taking this waste stream and it will be fed back into as a replacement for coal, for example, which is a much dirtier fuel and would have had much more life cycle impacts when we look at the mining of coal, let alone the burning of coal and its climate impacts, and now replacing that with something that would have gone into a hole as a fuel.
Absolutely.
Chris, can I jump in? I just wanted to make the point. So, I mean, this is an interesting observation that you have this changing role of the waste management company. Instead of being a handler, actually rebranching into these companies or into the production processes that follow. And we see that happening with straightforward incineration plants as well. So in Europe and elsewhere where these plants are common, you see these waste companies becoming owners of technology and so on and so forth. And I think that's a very interesting realm. I mean, we're talking about waste to energy, but it's equally true off air. We were talking about plastics recycling, and we can touch on that. But in a way, what I want to talk about is just the position of power in the supply chain or in the circle. Let's imagine the circle of how materials might flow. So we've got extraction, we've got production, we've got waste streams created. The people handling those waste streams, so that's either the municipality or, in the case of the private sector, the waste management companies. Isn't it true that these companies are finding themselves in an incredibly powerful position to identify opportunities and perhaps have the opportunity to pursue those opportunities, to perhaps pick and choose, perhaps to some degree? Is that good? Is it bad? I guess it's just a fact. To what extent, is this ownership of these waste streams acting as an impediment to innovation or an impediment to competition by other entrepreneurs who want to come in and play in that space and offer value? I mean, perhaps it's a bit of an unfair question, but give me your sense, give me your answer to that, if you will, please.
So when it comes to private companies and our ideal customers, for example, they would go out and tender. and who has the best price or the best solution or could meet their requirements for their own corporate goals. If it is zero waste to landfill or a 10% reduction in waste to landfill, then that's what their requirements and their request for or when they go out to tender is going to be. And it's a if you win it, you win it. And once you do, however, there is a duty of care, which means that once I go to a client to collect their waste, that waste, the ownership of it doesn't pass to me. The generator is responsible for the waste they generate from cradle to grave. So if I pick up that waste, and here's the logic to it. I mean, that means any waste company could probably pick up the waste and dump it at a roadside, and the generator would not be held responsible? No, they have a responsibility as much as we do to audit the processes, much the same as Averda ourselves. We, in all cases, are not able to fully process or get the complete value out of the waste streams on behalf of our client. Taking it to a plastic recycler where we may not have our own plastic recycling facility, for example, we have a duty to go and ensure and audit to make sure that that third party we are using is compliant, that the remnants and the discarded waste they have is actually going to the correct or legal compliant disposal sites, for example.
Yes. No, that makes sense. So just a final follow-on from that would be just to say, I mean, in your own observation, you know, in these various materials flows, value chains, I mean, are you finding that entrepreneurs are coming to you and saying, you know, we're interested in putting a project down to deal with this particular waste stream or that waste stream, or we're willing to invest in this, or we have this technology? Do you find that this is happening in the market? And yes, I guess it's a great, with power comes, well, with great power comes great responsibility, as you say. So it gives you a great view of the markets. Perhaps just comment on whether you are being approached and what is the company's attitude towards exploring some alternative, perhaps more innovative approaches.
It's been my experience that, well, in my experience, they normally approach the industry themselves that are generating that waste stream to say, you have this waste stream, I have a technology that you can use, so bring it to me, for example. What would make more sense is, as you say, to come to a company like Averda where we have the volumes.
Yes. No, absolutely. And it's perhaps Chris, comment on that or take the conversation in another direction, but over to you.
Well, a couple of things, and what Brindha raises in terms of duty of care is something that very few understand, and it's something we deal with on a daily basis. Whether that client is a government client who should be more knowledgeable about the policies and the procedures, or whether it's a business client, not knowing the law is not an excuse. So we've got to follow through in terms of the right policies, and that's also where I believe that modern waste management companies are really more in tune to be able to move away from being the hump and dumpers. We're no longer logistics companies. It's now about being a service company. So you've got to bring that knowledge and understanding to the clients. And the client then needs to become compliant through your compliance and through your knowledge and understanding. So it's very much more a service-related industry now. But there are huge opportunities in terms of looking at the existing materials. So we are already looking at, as you say, with your particular strategy, is to look at 80% diversion. Mm-hmm. And that can be obviously a lot easier with looking at the opportunities around the different types of waste streams from industries. They're generally separated, they're generally sort of single source, they're generally better managed, and they're put into a skip and it's easier to pick up and move. But there are more difficult components. Michael Manson has just popped up a question there in terms of looking at mining landfills. Obviously, Averda is, they do some landfill management, but they are not general waste haulers at all. But those are, again, opportunities where the industry has got to keep the eye on the ball, looking at those future opportunities, understanding with your global footprint, where we can look at what has been done sustainably, economically in other countries, what technologies we can bring forward, but the whole time looking at making sure that we are ensuring that your client base from a service perspective is compliant and are following duty of care, because duty of care goes all the way right through to our constitution, our Bill of Rights, with regards to each individual's right to a healthy environment. So there's a number of different options, and maybe you can try and unpack some of those services, the opportunities, and maybe have a chat, see what if you can give a quick answer to Mr. Manson's question as well.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for the question. Averda is actually doing it in India. We have a contract in Amritsar in India with government where we are working in partnership to start remining old landfills to extract value. So yes, possible.
Yeah, thanks very much for answering that question from Michael Mason there, Brindha. And Michael, thanks for that question. And just a reminder to anybody who's viewing the show live, please do send your questions in. We will respond. So thank you very much indeed. And so yes, back to Chris's question to you, Brindha, if you can comment on his statements back there.
Sorry, Chris, you have to help me.
Duty of care. So educating the client as a service to ensure their compliance, that they are becoming more circular. So that's what I'm saying. It's no longer hump and dump. It's about providing a service using the knowledge that you have in industry.
Absolutely. You know, Averda is not a waste company. We started as an engineering company in 1964, and I believe that's what's going to deliver for us and has allowed us to grow.
We've lost her. We'll wait for are you back?
Yeah.
Sorry, we lost you for a second. Carry on.
Where did you lose me at?
I didn't lose. Okay, yeah, great stuff. Carry on.
Sorry, between the two of you, I didn't get a word.
Chris?
Yeah, your video went off, and then we lost you just after you saying that Averda started as a engineering company in 1964.
Right. So it's an engineering company, and that's what's required now with the new strategy and the way we have to look at waste. It's about having the solutions and the research and the technology and the R&D behind each of the waste streams, right? And we have to do this while remaining within regulations and compliance, which is meant to enable this process. Okay, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I hear you when you say that we have a role to play, and 100% agree in terms of educating the customer. And we do. Most customers or most generators of waste don't know that they have to log into the information waste system and log their tonnages if generated above the threshold. Averda does that for our customers. We do the same in a very highly regulated medical waste industry, which is something we also manage. And yes, it is a duty of waste management sector to stay abreast of compliance, of I wouldn't like to say the checkbox or the hoops that generators have to jump, but it is our duty to keep our customers informed and compliant through information, education, awareness. Simple. Where we do on-site work in huge corporates, right? The corporate is focusing on his production line, but at the same time, to get the value out of his waste and to reach his corporate objectives of zero waste for landfill, for example, there needs to be segregation of waste at source. It's the very first step in waste management when you get down past the waste minimization and continuous improvement steps. And that basic education is what Averda provides to plant floor level. Yeah.
Well, it's also an important
question. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're quite right, and I think it's you hit the nail on the head. A lot of organizations, big businesses, it's not their core focus. they need a service company to provide that sort of information, education, make sure that the systems and processes are aligned to look at adequate segregation, etc. But also, the important thing from a corporate perspective is getting them to understand the legislative environment, looking at the policies and making sure that they are compliant as well. But it's also leads into a system of sustainability, which is becoming vitally important now across the board, whether you're an SMME or you're a massive corporate, where you've got to start achieving goals with regards to water efficiency, energy efficiency, looking at your waste management, to be able to measure your carbon footprint, to look at all these different elements that people are going to judge you on, whether that is your client or the consumer. So there's an additional benefit to doing things the right way and making sure that they follow through on the right process with a service provider that's going to give them the means to be able to look at measuring, managing, and reporting, doing the right thing, basically.
Thanks for that, guys. I want to maybe just chip in and send us back down a slightly different road to this conversation about driving circularity through the, let's say, the support of existing businesses and channels that are processing waste streams, and also looking at supporting or creating new industries that are able to do that for streams that are not currently being catered for. To what extent do the large waste management companies work with industry organizations like the EPOs, etc., that are looking after waste streams? Is there sort of a collaboration there? Is there a support system there where the company, the original client, perhaps through the waste management company, are supporting these organizations and their members to drive this process forward?
Chris, do you want to take this, or is it for me?
Well, maybe I can pop in. I mean, obviously the PROs and EPR are vitally important, and again, that's part of the service that you would provide as an organization. The opportunity is to be the ones that are driving the innovation, and I think that's where the waste management industry needs to understand their role. There are key components which have to be done, but sometimes, as Brindha said, everything is recyclable, but not everything is economically recyclable, and that's one of the biggest issues that we have here. And PROs and EPRs and all these other different components in terms of responsibilities need to be unpacked so that we can find the solutions and the opportunities to all the waste. So when you look at the likes of Averda and others who are trying to achieve very strict sort of guidelines in terms of meeting 80% diversion, they've got to keep their eye on the ball and look at what technologies are out there. But there's different ways that can be done. And I think the beauty of that is that if it's not an internal business directive of that organization itself, it can then work with the client to create a corporate social responsibility outcome or an enterprise development outcome that would look at being able to utilize that waste stream in a more efficient manner that would divert it from landfill. So there's many different ways that it can be unpacked, from the service provider to the client to the outcome. And that's really where we've all got to be the experts out there to help provide that guidance, to guide the clients. It's not just, as Brindha said, we've got to move away from the hump and dump mentality. Landfills are becoming massively problematic. You look at the constraints currently in Cape Town, Joburg. We are really facing a big problem, and we've been talking about it for years, and now it's on us. We've got a couple of years to sort of act up. We've got no more holes to dig and no more holes to fill. So we've got to follow those processes through. But then again, it's about partnerships. It's about understanding how we can also influence policy to unlock the obstacles that will allow us to look at new project developments and unlock the economic opportunities around those as well.
What a pleasure. Chris, I'm going to regard that to be your concluding comment for the show. So thank you very much indeed. We're out of time. I'd like to just give Brindha the final word. Perhaps comment on what we were discussing there a moment ago, but please just give us your vision for how you see the role of companies like yourselves in driving circularity into the future, and perhaps just make a concluding remark from your side there, please, Brindha. Thank you very much indeed.
So I'm going to quote Averda's vision, and that's a world without waste.
Perfect.
For too long, waste has been defined as something to be thrown away and of no value. Waste has value. Waste can create value in the economy, in the employment sector, beneficial to climate change, to us reaching our goals. The waste hierarchy has been around for a very, very long time. And specifically back then, I learned it related to environmental impact, but it's so much more. And that's what we need to be striving for to achieve a circular economy in the waste management sector.
What a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, as always, to Chris Whyte. Thank you to Brindha Roberts for your insights and for sharing the conversation with us. Good luck to you. Well done for the work you're doing. Keep it going. Push it forward. Let's innovate together. So best of luck to you and your colleagues at Averda. And on that note, thank you very much. We'll see everybody next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much again. See you then.
This show is brought to you by GBCSA's Positive Impact Magazine.
How do we grow this influence of black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chatlash, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.